Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to paint this cute little baby goat. For this painting, I'm using a 7 by 10 inch block of Arches 140-pound cold press paper. I'm starting with my Princeton Neptune size 12 round brush to paint with water inside of the goat's outline. I'll be using the wet and wet technique to block in my initial washes of color, so the paper needs to be glossy wet, but not so wet that puddles are forming. Once the entire area is coated with water, I have to work fast while it's wet. I drop in some lemon yellow and yellow ochre. This goat is white, which can be a challenging fur color to paint. There are a lot of yellows and blues in the shadows. White fur is never pure white. I'm using watered down phthalo blue to block in some of the defining shadow shapes in the goat's face and around the belly. The little tail sticking up is also in that cool shadow, so I'm dropping in some brighter blue here. I begin to darken my blue shadows. I start light and gradually work darker as my confidence grows in my color and value choices. This bright blue shadow tone is really fun to paint and really helps bring color harmony to the painting while also defining the goat's shape. A little yellow ochre mixes with the blue to create a greenish, warmer shadow. I add more hints of blue beneath the chin and inside the shadow of the chest. I want this little goat to look cheerful and whimsical, and I think the bright color choices help create that look. I bring some more blue into the head, painting around the eyes and nose for now. While that layer is wet, I rinse my brush and do a quick mixture of alizarin crimson for the nose. This bleeds a little bit into the blue, blending very nicely. I splay the bristles of my round brush and using an upward, light swiping motion, I paint some fur texture on the top of the head. This edge on the right dried a little bit too hard, so I take a clean damp brush and scrub that edge to soften it. And I also scrub out any blooms that might have occurred while I was painting the head. I add a little more yellow ochre to the belly and introduce some darker shadows to those knobby little knees and between the front legs. I put down some lemon yellow, but it's too bright, so I wash it down with clean water on my damp brush. I paint in a loose green wash to suggest grass beneath the goat's feet. I deepen the shadow with a little dark brown and undersea green, using a dabbing motion with the tip of my brush and carefully painting between the legs. Some quick swiping motions create the effect of long curving blades of grass coming up around the goat. I switch to my size 8 round brush, wet the area on the goat's neck, and add some yellow ochre to define the shadow. I see a lot of variation in my reference photo between these cooler shadows and warmer shadows, so I'm frequently switching back and forth between blue and yellow. I take a very dark gray, which is a mixture of indigo and burnt umber, to paint in the inside rim of the ear. Then I use burnt sienna to fill that in. For the other ear, I start with a lighter color since it was already on my brush, and then outline it with the dark gray. I do some negative painting, avoiding the highlight in the ear and the highlights in the black eyes. These details are the darkest part of the painting because the head is definitely the focal point. The little horns and eyes are rimmed with black, so I carefully paint those dark details using the tiny tip of my round brush. This kind of brush control takes practice. If you'd like some tips on how you can practice and get better at using different brushes, be sure to check out my video on brush strokes. I'm adding a darker bluish gray shadow around the left eye, connecting it to the ear and blending the wash into the whole face. I soften the bottom edge of the left ear with just a little scrubbing motion of my damp brush. Going back to the shadows on the belly and the hind legs, I darken them with more gray washes. I add a light wash to the back as well. Now that all of my initial colors and values are blocked in, the painting has definitely reached the detailing stage, where I go back in, darken, and refine. You've probably noticed I've slowed way down and I'm really taking the time to check my values and add depth and definition to solidify my shapes. The way to do this is by making sure my shadows are dark enough relative to the highlights. I go brighter with my blue shadow. Now that it's dried, it's lost some of that initial vibrancy, so I want to bring that back in. I used raw umber and indigo to darken the knees again, and another wash of phthalo blue on the front leg shadows. Layering, layering. This method certainly takes time and patience, but I think it gives artwork a delightful complexity, especially because with transparent watercolor, you can see the progression of layers beneath. When you work this way, you do run into the danger of overworking an area. To avoid this, make sure a layer is completely dry before painting another layer over it. The exception, of course, is when you're using the wet and wet technique. Whatever you do, make sure you're being intentional. And if you're still in the beginning stages of learning watercolor and still feel like you have no idea what you're doing and couldn't be intentional if you tried, that's okay. Try a technique, make a mental note of how it worked or didn't work, and try to duplicate that the next day or change it if it didn't work. There's no way to shortcut this skill. Watercolor just takes practice and dedication. Moving on to the nose, I'm just using black to paint the dark details and then a reddish brown for the nose itself and the area just above the mouth. Honestly, I probably should have switched to a smaller brush here, but I think I was just being lazy. You can really do a lot with a size 8 though. I'm continuing to refine the details in the face, splaying my brush to add some gray fur texture. Pay attention to the direction in which the fur is growing. In the case of our little baby goat here, there is a cowlick in the center of the forehead, and the fur seems to start there and curve out and away towards the ears. I darken the shadow that runs between the eye and the mouth, leaving a highlight along the side that helps define the shape of the goat's skull. Those little knees still need to go a little darker. I'm now adding brown fur textures all over on the knees, hooves, neck, and at the base of the tail. The shadows on the hind legs need to go a little darker too. My final touch is to use a bright yellow-green to suggest sunlit spring grass behind the goat. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new here, and tell all your friends who are interested in learning watercolor about my brand new channel. I post new content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so also be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss any new videos. Thanks for watching!